NBC News has some exclusive video. Just moments ago, we caught up with Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Let's take a listen.
Well, I have not met with any Russians at any time to discuss any political campaign, and those remarks are unbelievable to me and are false, and I don't have anything else to say about that.
What about
so thank you.
He did say he would, he went on to say he would recuse himself from the Russia investigation if it came to that.
If you're an incumbent, it's one thing. You've got to govern at the same time you campaign. If you're not the incumbent,
right,
you would be so careful. That's why they invented 11-foot poles, because 10-foot poles aren't long enough. No. You would never want to be accused in any way of somehow overlapping foreign policy and politics. So.
Jeff Sessions is an experienced politician.
Especially at the time, again, when you're having charges that the Russian government and Vladimir Putin are actively trying to influence the United States of America's presidential election. And you're meeting with these people? At that time?
Perhaps the two are unconnected, but regardless of whether they appoint a special prosecutor, the Democrats on the Hill are needless to say, completely focused on this, and they are not going to rest until they have turned over every rock, called every official in front of them to testify, subpoenaed. This is going to go on for a long time.
So, Mika, what does this mean for Republicans like Marco Rubio on the Intel Committee, who's promised a full investigation? What's it mean for John McCain, who obviously has already been very deeply concerned about this? Do we start seeing Republicans coming out calling for a special prosecutor?
You had Darrell Issa.
Have to do the right thing.
Right?
I mean, I can't imagine John McCain would not do anything less than the right thing on this.
But it can't be done within the intelligence committees. I think one of the real issues it's Republican-controlled committees. It's too much careful handling of intelligence material. People are going to argue it needs to get out from under the Intelligence Committee to something bigger and more legal.
Again, I don't take back my statement at the top that this could be a
Lindsey
career.
Graham made that point last night in a town hall meeting. He said we may now need a special prosecutor, and he said my dear friend Jeff Sessions has to recuse himself from.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I've known Jeff Sessions for a long time. I like the guy an awful lot on a personal level. I will say this though, if my mother did this and testified this, I said, Mom, I'm coming over this weekend with the kids. Love you. You got to appoint a special prosecutor.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm dead serious. This is obvious. You can love and respect Jeff Sessions as a friend, as a Republican for 20 years. But this is just a bright line.
And it's also vaguely in their interest, right? Because if they don't do it, there's going to be drop, Chinese water drop torture.
No, you
appoint somebody, and if there's nothing there, you get it over with.
You do not want Sean Spicer to go out and get absolutely mauled every day for the next 2 weeks. Get in front of this. Call for the special prosecutor.
I can't even imagine what that's going to look like.
Call for the special prosecutor and let Spicer annoce that. Get ahead of it.
Maybe he'll ban some.
And by the way, the second you do that, you say, we don't know what's happened here, but we need to get a special prosecutor to figure it out. So we're going to do that at the White House so we can focus on getting people back to work. And there you go.
Okay,
let's bring in NBC investigative reporter Ken Delaney. And Ken, good to see you this morning. So we've been talking a little bit about the timing of both of these pieces we've been discussing, the New York Times and the Washington Post. What more can you tell us about that?
Good to be with you guys. Well, these are well-reported, deeply reported stories, so I'm skeptical of the idea that they just appeared on the day after Trump had a great day, via some instant leaks. But I was speaking to a source very familiar with this investigation last night who was saying you should think of these two stories as linked in a way because they are the product of the same process, which is this. After the election, when the intelligence community started realizing the extent of the Russian hacking and leaking operation and the suspicions that Trump associates were colluding with Russians, they started scrubbing all the intelligence. And that's really what this New York Times story describes. But I'm not sure our viewers are going to understand. I mean, you've got the NSA out in Fort Meade has a vast eavesdropping operation, right? They're scooping up communications. They're monitoring particularly foreign diplomats and Russian officials. But a lot of that stuff never gets translated. And even stuff that gets translated never gets distributed outside of Fort Meade. So what happened is the investigators started looking for specific people and examining conversations and emails, and they found things. And they started writing up those intelligence reports and distributing them widely across the government, as the New York Times described, in a way to preserve them and to make sure that many different officials and members of Congress saw them. So, and we don't know how the information about the Sessions meeting came to the attention of the Washington Post, but we do know that the FBI was monitoring the Russian ambassador and monitoring his communication. So did he write a memo about this meeting that went back to the Kremlin that was then picked up by the NSA and the FBI? This is what fascinates me about all this. It's like something out of a spy novel. And this is the apparatus that, Edward Snowden revealed to the world, and now we're seeing it in action here.
So, Ken, we asked Michael Schmidt, one of the authors of the New York Times piece, about these alleged meetings that were picked up by international surveillance and intelligence communities inside Russia between Trump associates, as they were described, and friends of the Putin government. Do you have any more reporting or insight into who Trump associates are? It's a very broad term. Are they people from the campaign? Are they friends of his from the business community? Because obviously that's a big distinction to make.
It is, and we don't have that reporting. We have reporting that Paul Manafort is under FBI scrutiny involving his ties to a Ukrainian oligarch. And our reporting has always been that these Russians were not necessarily Russian intelligence officials, as the New York Times originally asserted and kind of scaled back in this story, but merely Russians, some with ties to the Kremlin, some Russian officials. But of course, in the Russian state these days, a lot of people have ties to the intelligence apparatus, some official, some unofficial. But those questions are the crucial ones, and it's not clear that they're ever going to get to the bottom of this. Former FBI officials who've worked Russian counterintelligence cases say they can't imagine that a Russian intelligence agent would be silly enough to sit down with an American and say, "Hey, we're going to help you, steer the election." That's just not how it works. So this may be a difficult case to unravel.
All right, NBC News investigative reporter Ken Delaney. Good reporting as always, Ken. Thanks.
Let's bring in Congressman Eric Swell of California. He's the ranking member of the CIA subcommittee, which falls under the Intel Committee. Congressman, should the Attorney General resign?
Good morning. He certainly should recuse himself. I think he probably should resign. We have more Russian ties that are followed by more Russian lies coming out of this administration.
Well, it's a little bit of a leap. Is there anything, I guess we could just have the benefit of the doubt here. Is there anything wrong with meeting with the Russian ambassador as a senator? I mean, because that's the claim that Sessions' office is giving. He was meeting in his capacity as a senator.
He certainly would have been the only senator from the Washington Post report that would have been meeting with the Russian ambassador right after reports had been coming out that Russia was actively attacking our democracy. And that's what's so troublesome, is no one else is meeting with the Russian ambassador except Senator Sessions. And again, he lied about it twice under oath to Congress. So he's lost his independence as the top prosecutor in our country and should have nothing to do with any future Russian investigations.
Willie, I mean, that is really, at the end of the day, it's the lie, just like it was with Flynn. It was the lie about meeting with Russia. And you've got to say that NSA chief lied about a meeting with Russia, a Russian official. The Attorney General now has, I'm sorry, in his testimony before Al Franken. There's not another word for it. He lied to Al Franken about not meeting with any Russian officials. That just makes the snowball roll down the hill much faster.
And he wasn't asked directly by Al Franken about that. He volunteered that information. I want to get this in quickly because NBC News has some exclusive video. Just moments ago, we caught up with Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Let's take a listen.
Well, I have not met with any Russians at any time to discuss any political campaign, and those remarks are unbelievable to me and are false, and I don't have anything else to say about that.
What about
so thank you.
He did say he would, he went on to say he would recuse himself from the Russia investigation if it came to that. He'd be open to recuse. He didn't announce he's recusing himself. He said he'd be open to recusing himself.
But Congressman, as you said before, though, he did, in questioning with Al Franken, he did explicitly say that he was seen as a surrogate of the campaign, and he certainly never met with any Russian officials, right?
The Russian ambassador is a Russian official, and again, it looks like he's just trying to be cute with his words now, when clearly he had a number of opportunities to be truthful about a meeting with Russian contacts. This was one of the top concerns about any Trump nominee that was going through confirmation processes, and for him to not disclose that is very troubling and calls into question his independence.
Eric Swalwell, Congressman, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
Two things. One, if he wasn't talking about the campaign, then what was he talking about? about with the Russians. Was it what they were doing in Syria, what they were doing in Ukraine, what have you? And given the context, why someone who was affiliated with the campaign would have taken the risk at that moment? Because this wasn't, shall we say, against a backdrop of nothing. This was against the backdrop of Russian interference in the campaign.
Yeah, it really is. It is surprising, to say the least.